It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, I'm Tyler Habney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello, and welcome back to Dungeons and Dystopias. I am your host, Tyler Habney. I have run a combined total of over 200 different games of Cyberpunk Red and Dungeons and Dragons, and I am of course here to share my thoughts with you. Today's episode is going to be about Dungeons and Dragons, everyone's favorite. Today we're going to be discussing magic in Dungeons and Dragons, and sort of all the different fun things you can do with magic. Obviously, a lot of people probably already have an idea. If you're listening to this podcast, there is a chance you have played Dungeons and Dragons before. So there's a pretty good chance you already know how spell slots and all that stuff kind of go down. So we're going to give a very, very brief sort of description of what spell slots are for those who might not have played. So spell slots are your resource in Dungeons & Dragons that you need in order to cast spells. Not all classes have spell slots, but most do, I'd say, in some form or other, or you can get them. And basically, you have differing spell slots of differing levels. So let's say I have a first level spell slot and a second level spell slot. I can cast a first level spell or a second level spell with those slots. I could also upcast my first level spell into a second level spell, and usually not all the time, but usually that will have some extra added on effect that allows you to do more damage maybe, or hit more people with the spell. So that's the basic fundamentals of how spell slots work, and then from those fundamentals things get a little crazy. Every class has a different method of getting spells, I suppose, of learning them and of being able to prepare them for, spell slots. Of course, every class also has a different level or a different number of spell slots. For instance, a wizard might have more spell slots than, say, a sorcerer. Or a warlock. I believe anyone has more spell slots than a warlock. But the thing about warlock is all their spell slots are upcasted at the same level. So for instance, let's say I'm a high level warlock, I think like level 9 or something, level 9 or 10, most of my spells are going to be cast, I think all my spells are going to be cast at 5th level, because that's just how warlock works. Just crazy stuff like that. It's really changes depending on what class you're playing. So I think today we're just going to kind of talk about magic as if we were a wizard of some sorts, and sort of looking at all these different spells and the utilization that they hold. So spells themselves are pretty great in D&D. There's so many out there, and people be making their own. But we can kind of go over how spells are defined. So in D&D, there are 9 levels of spells. It's technically 10. It starts with cantrips, which are spells you can cast pretty much whenever. You do not need a spell slot. They're that easy. And then from there on, it goes up to level 9. So technically, that's 10 levels of spells. They're also all broken into different schools of magic. There's evocation, divination, abjuration, necromancy, illusion, enchantment, divination. There's a lot of different types of magic. And all of these, if you've played, Elder Scrolls, obviously have sort of their own different types of spells that they sort of hold on to. For instance, enchantment magic is all about charming people and enchanting them to do what you want them to. Obviously, something like evocation magic, that one is all about elements and destruction and being able to properly cast a fireball. Evocation wizards are great because they can cast fireball on their team and not hurt any of their friends, which is not something any other wizard can do. Speaking of fireball, let's actually talk on a couple of special little spells, going from cantrip to level 9, that I think deserve a little bit of attention. And I do want to kind of avoid some of the more stereotypical ones that people say, Toll the Dead, Sacred Flame. All great spells. Eldritch Blast, of course, is part of the reason so many people take a Warlock. However, I still think there are a lot more spells out there that people don't really use that much. And personally, I think that's a problem. I think more people need to be using crazy spells. For instance, I mean, this is for my table, I suppose. We don't really use too much of stuff like Shillelagh or Shape Water, which, I mean, could just be because all of our druids are always in animal form and stuff like that. But Shillelagh is great. It allows you to basically take a stick, a club or quarterstaff, which to me, the definition of club and / or quarterstaff tends to be, pretty vague. You can make a lot of things into a club and / or quarterstaff. So basically, just grab a stick, and you can imbue that stick with the power of nature itself. Instead of dealing whatever damage the stick would have normally done, it becomes a D8, and you add your wisdom modifier to the damage of each attack, which is great. And even better, the cantrip gets better as you level up. Once you hit level 5, that becomes a D10. Once you hit level 11, it's a D12. And once you hit level 17, it becomes 2D6 for Shillelagh, which basically gives you effectively the equivalent of a sword, but it's just a stick you found in the woods. It's pretty great. Another really good cantrip that I haven't seen a ton of personally is something like Thorn Whip. Personally, I think Thorn Whip is a very useful spell. It allows for basically pulling people closer to you. It's very useful, I'd say, for team efforts where you're trying to pull a monster closer in. But this pulls someone 10 feet closer to you and deals piercing damage, which also, like Shillelagh, increases as you level up. It becomes 2d6 at 5th level, 3d6 at 11th, and 4d6 at 17th, which is pretty decent. But those are two really cool cantrips. I don't personally see a ton of use out of. There are some other cantrips that make sense to not see a bunch of use out of. True Strike is functionally useless, really. It is an action that allows yourself to give yourself advantage on the next attack, right? But the thing is, rolling advantage is rolling twice and taking the higher number. You could just do that already by attacking twice instead of taking a whole action to cast True Strike. Yeah, I don't know if they thought that one through too much. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about first level spells and all the fun things that they can do. So first level spells, this is when we actually get into our spell slots, and there are quite a bit. So I'm really going to talk about probably just a few that I find are particularly useful. And both of these, I think we're going to talk about reaction spells here. So when something happens to you in D&D, you can take a reaction, which you only have one of per round. So you've got to make sure you use the right reaction at the right time, or else you might wind up being a little screwed down the line. Absorb Elements. Absorb Elements is a very handy spell to have as a reaction spell. It allows you to halve any elemental damage you take. So if you get hit by fire, lightning, thunder, poison, I don't think psychic damage counts, but stuff like that, ice damage, you can have it just as a reaction. And that has saved a couple of my players' bacon a few times. Really, it's done some wonders. Let me tell you. I even take it on most of my characters now, just because I've seen it put to use so well so many times. The other reaction spell that you will probably see a lot more than Absorb Elements is Shield. Shield is a spell that goes to sorcerers, warlocks. I think. Sorry, sorcerers, wizards. I don't know about warlocks. I don't think clerics get it, but it is the basic gist. It's a reaction spell that increases your armor class by 5. So if I have a 16 armor class, that'll increase it up to 21 until the end of the round, which is really, really, really great for spellcasters, especially wizards who really don't have much armor outside of the spell Mage Armor, which is also first level, and allows them to set their armor class to 13 plus their dexterity modifier. So if I'm a wizard with, let's say, a 16 in dexterity, so that's a plus 3 dexterity modifier, I would have a DC or an AC of 16. And then with shield, plus 5, that makes it 21, which is really good. Shield is so useful. In terms of second level spells, this is where we kind of get into there's some quite a bit of utility in second level, but there is some damaging stuff like Scorching Ray, which allows you to shoot 3 rays of fire that each deal 2d6 damage. So if you hit all 3, that is a combined 66 damage, which is really good. And then there are other ones in second level like Knock, Invisibility, Alter Self, all sorts of stuff. Knock is a very useful spell for utility. It allows you to unlock anything that is locked, as long as it's not a magical lock. I think that's the important part. If it's just a normal mundane lock, Knock will open that thing right away. It'll make a loud noise doing it, but it will open it up real quick. Third level is when we get to all the really fun, really cool spells. You get third level at level 5 in D&D, and wow, oh wow, do we get some really great choices here. Obviously, I gotta give it to Fireball. Fireball shows up at third level. It is the defining D&D third level spell, I would say, because so many people just love casting Fireball. But other spells like Animate Dead become available at third level. And Animate Dead is obviously super important for necromancers. Like, insanely important. If you're becoming a necromancer, you're going to want to take Animate Dead. And in fact, I'm almost positive they give you Animate Dead for free, but I could be wrong on that. Fly also becomes available at level 3, so you can make your character fly. Haste, which gives people an additional haste action, which is very useful. It also doubles their speed, and I believe it increases their AC. So haste, pretty great. Really, honestly, in terms of some of the great D&D spells, you will see a lot of them in third level. Now, when it comes to fourth level, we do have a sort of increase here in, I guess, utility. Blight is, I think, the highest damage fourth level spell. Everything else is a lot about, utility, enchanting and charming people. Dimension Door, which allows you to teleport up to 500 feet away. You don't even really have to know the location, just the direction and the approximate distance you want to travel. There are spells like Fabricate, which allow you to create items. There are a lot of summon spells that come with fourth level, and you get the higher version of invisibility, greater invisibility, which allows you to do way more. For fifth level, we're back to a lot of interesting stuff. We have Cloud Kill, which is a giant gas of poison, a giant cloud of poison gas. Pretty great crowd control. The cloud will sort of stay there, or you can make it float around with a little bit of wind. Bigby's hand is a giant hand. You can punch people with it, grab people with it, do all sorts of things with a giant hand. Cone of Cold is another very popular D&D spell. It has to do with, hitting a bunch of people in a cone with cold. and it does pretty well at that. In terms of 6th level spells, we're really kind of starting to get into the stuff that's pretty crazy. Stuff like Chain Lightning is just great. Disintegrate is class A spell. If you're hitting somebody with Disintegrate, you are dealing an insane 10d6 plus 40 damage. And if it kills them, it literally disintegrates them into ash. Personally, sixth level is when we start getting into the wow, you're a very powerful person kind of stuff. 7th level, yeah, it still goes higher than this. 7th level, we have stuff like Crown of Stars, which is really good. It allows you to basically create a bunch of stars that you can fire at people over time, over an hour. Delayed Blast Fireball, which is you can create a fireball, a bead, and then that fireball will build in damage until you eventually detonate it. So you can have a very high damage Delayed Blast Fireball if it's quite delayed. We also have stuff like Force Cage, which allows you to create an invisible cage around somebody made out of sheer force magic, which is insane and very cool. And makes sense because it's a 7th level spell. Plane Shift is in here, so if you want to shift planes, you can do that. You can just go to other planes once you hit level 7. You really start to open up the universe of Dungeons & Dragons as a whole. You even get the actual resurrection spell at level 7. All right, and then 8th level spells. We're getting towards the end here. We have stuff like Clone, Control Weather, Demiplane, Dominate Monster, Earthquake, Feeble Mind, which is insane. It basically makes your intelligence like 2. It makes it 1 if you fail on Feeble Mind, and it's like that for 30 days. And if you fail the saving throw, which once again your saving throw is 1. You succeed. If you succeed, you get out. Otherwise, you have to have the Greater Restoration, Heal, or Wish spell cast on you. And speaking of Wish, I think it's about time we actually get into those beautiful 9th level spells. These are spells most people will never, ever be able to cast because most campaigns do not go to 9th level spells. But this has stuff like Power Word Kill, which if somebody is below 100 HP and you cast the spell, they die. That's it. That's the spell. You have Astral Projection, which allows you to project yourself into the astral plane, and you can plane shift that way. You can, in fact, I'd say be a little bit more controlling, if depending on what D&D lore you're following, what edition. Time Stop allows you to stop time, take a bunch of turns, and then it all happens at once when time resumes. And then, of course, there is Wish, which it does what it says on the tin. It gives you a wish. And every time you cast Wish, there's a chance you can never, ever, ever cast the spell again. So be very careful what you wish for. That will do it for the spells. We're actually going to get now into our D&D Monster of the Week. And I figure since we're doing casters, I want to do a monster that's a little bit more niche. I don't know if you would call this niche, but when you think about D&D media, you almost never see this monster represented. And personally, I think that's a crime. I'm talking about the Nothic. So the Nothic is, if you've ever watched the old Scooby-Doo movies that James Gunn made, there's this creature in them, I think it's Scooby-Doo 2, that it's like a Cyclops thing. It's very skinny, it's got claws. That thing basically looks like a Nothic. These things are hunched over, spiked, scaled monsters, abominations, aberrations as they're called, that has one big green eye and this big ol' smile. And these things are insane. They like to hang out just sort of in the deepest, darkest recesses, looking for secrets and artifacts and stuff like that. And they're not exactly tough of a fight. They're CR2, so like a decent challenge for 4 level 2 adventurers. Oh no. However, it has an ability called Weird Insight, and that's why I chose it. Weird Insight allows the Nothic to target a creature within 30 feet of it. If that creature fails on a charisma check against the Nothic's wisdom check, the Nothic learns a secret or fact about the target. They just know it. They just automatically gain that knowledge. And that is crazy, because that means a Nothic can do a whole lot of things and be a whole lot of places in a campaign just because of that ability alone. I mean, think about it. If you're like a politician or something in the Forgotten Realms, wouldn't it be kind of cool to have a Nothic on your side that can discover all of these things about your opponents or, people who you disagree with? And that could allow for some corruption to take hold. And that could be an entire campaign, really, when you think about it. An early level campaign is finding out what's going on with this politician and this Nothic he has. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's like maybe it's a consensual relationship, or maybe he's got it like locked down in a cage in his basement or something. You never know. But that's a Nothic. Personally, one of my favorite D&D monsters to throw at an early level party, because nobody will ever see it coming. That will be it for this week, however. Please come back next week for a little bit of Cyberpunk Red action. As for now, though, I'm Tyler Hapney, and this has been Dungeons & Dystopias. Thank you so much for listening.